Greetings, my friends. Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. I'm super thrilled to be here with you. I hope you've had a successful, phenomenal week, getting a lot done. We are closing up April, believe it or not. I think this year is just flying by. We've had so many great events, but we are here again. So thank you so much for tuning in and spending this time with me. I love you guys. You guys are great. I want to go into some announcements with you. First things first, regarding the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. This podcast, it will be featured on the X Factor EDU, which is hosted by Dr. Matthew Joseph in the Tribe. You can also find it on Spotify and on all of the social media outlets. So just take a look at it wherever you find fit, share it with a neighbor, and continue to spread the word for us. Thank you so much for liking it on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, wherever you find it. Secondly, I wanted to encourage you to follow me when you get a chance on social media. My Facebook is Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. TikTok is Dr. India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123. Threads is Indie238 as well. Threads is. It's the same as Instagram. So with that said, find me on one of those platforms, like and subscribe. I appreciate all of the feedback and the collaboration and those that have been, messaging me about conferences and different things like that. I appreciate you. Speaking of conferences, I do have some upcoming events. I have the Wisconsin Math Council in May next week, which is going to be great with a host of rock stars there. I'll be planning to do a keynote there. I just got accepted to speak for FCTM in Florida in June, so I hope to see many of you there. I also plan on going to the CAMPS conference in July in Texas. I also am scheduled to do some speaking at NCSM and then also ICTM in October. So very, very, very busy schedule, and more are piling on, and I'm super excited. So with that said, I hope to see you guys at some of those events. In addition, if you're coming on this podcast, you're like, okay, what are we going to talk about? This is basically the objective of this podcast. So if you are trying to close the achievement gap, but you're having classroom management issues and your students just aren't motivated to do the work, then join me on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. I just love coming here. I love talking to you guys about grit and things like that. I also wanted to remind you to please check out my website. I'm constantly keeping it updated for you. It's www.india-white.com for books, blogs, and to schedule me for your next speaking or coaching event. I also wanted to update everybody because I know I have a tribe out here that has followed my work, and I have been an author, a textbook author for some amazing, amazing companies, and I'm so thankful. And so with that said, I'm now transitioning into a new chapter with Savvis Learning as an author, used to be known as Pearson. So thank you to the Savvis tribe. Thank you to the ongoing tribe that has loved me through all these years and all of these transitions and all of these new doors. Now that I'm with this team, I'm super honored, and I just can't wait to learn with them and to rock it out with them as well. So with that said, I now want to get back to the show. I want to talk with you a little bit today because I know that teachers are ending the school year, and so people are asking for, tips and things. So I want to talk today about tips for ending the school year strong with equitable practices. We might throw a little bit of gritty stuff in there too. And I want to talk about this now because I know this is April. We're getting ready to go into the last time of testing for students. You're wrapping up the grades, you're wrapping up the school year. And so I think it's imperative that we really talk about some great things that we can do. So first things first is I'll lead and I'll talk with some tips just from my heart. And I might share some stories, and then I'm going to pull up some things that I found from the web for us. Okay, so that we can talk about it. So first things first, tips for ending the school year. This is coming from me. End with a end of the year project. So in my math class, I would do an end of the year project, and I would take my book. So whether you're using, Savvis or you're using another company, I would take my textbook and I would walk through every chapter. So I would allow the students to pick a chapter. and the students had to teach their class about that chapter. And so, like, say there's 14 chapters, and then there's all of the different lessons. I would basically print out that table of contents, and I would cut it up into strips of paper so that students can choose. And sometimes they would choose randomly. So I would put the strips in a plastic bag and then walk around and let them choose what they got. And then if they were like, oh, I don't want to teach on translations, or oh, I don't want to teach on, whatever, the area of a rectangle, whatever, then I would allow them to swap it out at the end after everybody else has already selected. I found this is very random, this was very fair, and it was very effective. Students went for it. They would have to memorize, they would have to look at, the topic and find out the benchmarks and find out what was going on. And then they had to present. So they had to create like a poster chart, poster board. They had to get one of those, and they had to work. They couldn't use pencil on my projects. They had to use dry erase markers and pens, and they would have to teach the class. They had to have a title, things, and I put together a rubric. If you're needing some support with something like that, let me know. I'd be honored to help you. But anyway, we would do this. And I found that it was very effective, and students loved it. And it was way better than just cramming a bunch of things at them and saying like, okay, here's this end of the year test, go. And I'm not against end of the year tests either. I would say that that's a great idea for that, cumulative review, especially when you're trying to spiral them into the next school year. That's great. However, I find that when you do a project and you allow their student voice to be enhanced, it just really spices up the classroom, the learning environment. And it just really helps them to end with a bang. So that is definitely one thing. And of course, I already mentioned just end of the year reviews, which are great, which I would do a review. And then I would also go over every single problem with the students. If you're not reviewing with your students, I'm telling you, you're missing a golden opportunity to really help to bridge in those gaps, and to just have that their gains to be increased and for them to attain and to retain their knowledge. So anyways, so we would do like end of the year reviews, and it would be like a quiz, but it would, or like test. It'd be like 35 problems or so, but it would be throughout the entire. Now I know many digital math programs have the capability of creating those for you. So I would recommend that you go and you look at those and figure out what your program does. How does it speak to that? If you don't have a program, look up some cumulative, end of the year exams for 8th grade math, or for algebra 1, for 6th grade, whatever your grade is, and go for it. And then of course you can also go with your department heads and, and with all of the teachers, and you guys can plan a PLC where you piece those things together and make it work. Now, let's get back to my next goal, or my next tip for you. So tip number 2, discussing your grades and negotiations with students. This is so key. They need this. Students are going to come at you pitching various ideas as to how they can get their grade up, how they can make up that quiz or test. Some students will come to you with that 89%, wanting an A. And I just want to say this to the teachers that are in that spot. What does it hurt? What do you lose if you give a student an opportunity to make up an assignment so that their grade will be higher and they will go into 89 to 90%, 89 to 92? So you're helping them to become an A student in your class. What do you lose if you give that student an opportunity? Because that is an equitable practice, to be able to work with students and giving them an opportunity to either retest or to, show their competency, take notes, try it again, take that assignment on the computer again. What do you lose? I don't think you really lose anything. I think if anything, it adds to you and it adds to the value of that student. So I want to encourage all of the teachers that have those students that are on the borderline of 89%, 69%, 79%, and they're just right there. And you're like, no, you're going to go down with an 89.46. No, 89.44, because I just cannot round and I cannot give you any hope for an A. I want to encourage those teachers to really just have a little bit of grace, and to work with your students in these end days of the school year. Okay, now next, helping seniors get on track towards graduation. So I'm going to flip it towards my high school peeps. Whoop, whoop. So seniors, they need you more than ever right now. It's April 24th. The timeline is ticking towards graduation. Some students are still making up exams. Please work with them. If they're making up assignments, making up classes, allow them to have time, whether it's with their guidance counselor or in your class during lunch or, before school, after school, where they can sit on the computer and work, or they can work in your class, whatever, especially if it's for your class. I think these students, sometimes life has hit them, and so they're dealing with so many different obstacles, and sometimes they have a hard time communicating that to us and letting us know as leaders what they're going through. So I think that a part of our duty as educators is to have a little bit of grace and mercy, and to open up our classrooms so that they can get caught up, especially guidance counselors as well right now. Guidance counselors definitely need, and shout out to the guidance counselors. I usually don't talk to guidance counselors on the show. Shout out to all of you guys, but guidance counselors definitely at this time, please do what you can to be proactive at reaching out to all those students, especially those that are falling behind, to see how you can get them on track so that they can graduate, because we don't need our students falling through the crack. If students are bilingual, and maybe they just need a little bit of support of explaining to the parents the college enrollment process or whatever it is that they're going into, military, whatever, please work with their parents, work with whoever you can to make it happen so that those kids can be successful as they transition. Also, the next tip here, plan for packing your room up. So what is your system at the end of the year? Do you have your students work with you? Like, do you assign points? Like, do you have a money system? Like, I had a money system, and if students would help me, I would give them $20 for like a nice deed, or I would give them $40 if they're like picking things up and like truly like going all in, or I would assign like, okay, you get $40 a day, like for helping out. I had different things going on that would engage the students. And I would encourage that you try to find a system, find a way, because you're only one person. You've been teaching 80 plus students a year. And it's only fair, because they've helped contribute to the classroom, that they also help with contributing in a way to pack up the school year. Now, I'm not saying like you're taking them through where it's just hard labor. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, of course, using discretion, and even having a list saying, hey, who wants to volunteer to help me clean up some things? You get $20 per item, or you get $20 if you sign up. That's the money system, fake money, by the way. Or you get tickets, or you get points, or whatever your PBIS system is on your campus. I hope you have one. Something like that, where you're able to really gauge the students and get them engaged and get them in. I would highly recommend that you start thinking about how you're going to pack up the school year, so that you're not left at the end of the school year feeling like the classroom is going to cave in on you, because there are books thrown everywhere, paper everywhere, pencil on the floor, scissors, and so start thinking about that, start planning so that you can leave in peace. And then, of course, some schools, they'll have you empty out your whole classroom because you might be switching classrooms. So start thinking about that. Start getting some bins and boxes and things that you need, so that your transition will be smooth. And some of you will be promoted to administration. And congratulations. Now, number 5, teachers. Schedule a meeting with your administration about what you'll do to teach, or what you'll teach next year. So say you're teaching Algebra 1, but maybe you just weren't a good fit. Start having those negotiations. Like, maybe you're like, I really feel like I want to teach 6th grade math, or 8th grade math. Or maybe Algebra 1 is, not as stimulating for you, and you want to go into the higher ups, the calcs, the pre-calcs, the college algebra. Then start having a conversation with your administration. But I'm going to say this too. Your administration will be looking at the test scores. So if you're saying, I want to teach Algebra 1, and then all of your 8th grade kids tanked, and you only had 27% proficiency, you're probably going to have a different conversation. So, one that would lead you towards a different, or maybe a lower grade level, so that, it's more manageable and whatnot. And so with that said, definitely, if you feel like you're super solid and you've got the backing that says like, okay, algebra one's my thing, or algebra two, or pre-calc, go for it, but make sure that you have a great argument. Because your administrators, they don't know all the answers of who's the best fit. I mean, sometimes they're just going off of a hunch, or off of like, oh, I think, or I've heard this, but they need data. So if you have data to bring to the table, go for it. And I wish you the best on that. Next, number 6, have a heart-to-heart with your students. So start explaining to your students your expectations. I can't tell you how many times I've had to reiterate my rules and procedures, not in a way to punish my students, but because this is communication. You have 25 students in your class or more. You have to communicate. They don't always know like what's going on. They can't read our minds. So sometimes I would say, like, times like this, hey guys, now listen, I know we've got this exam coming around the corner. You guys have done a great job. I'm proud of every single one of you. Go and knock it out of the ballpark. I taught you how to be gritty. I taught you what you needed to do. Make sure you have those formulas memorized and written down. Make sure that when you get into that exam, you're writing down those formulas before you get started, and then you're just going to knock it out of the ballpark. Write those positive sayings to yourself. Talk to them, but then start talking to them about the end of the year. So after you take that exam, I have some high expectations for you as we're ending the school year. First, I need to make sure that I have prepared you for the next school year, the next grade level. So we're going to be doing a last end of the year packet where you guys are going to be kind of a boot camp style, but we're going to be knocking this out together. I'll give you a quiz grade for it, or I'll give you an assignment grade for it, whatever your negotiation is. And then saying, okay, and then I also want you to do an end of the year project where you're going to show me what you've learned and your teaching abilities and your confidence. And then I'm going to provide you guys the rubric with that. Then we're going to wrap at the end of the school year on this date. Like, give them specifics so they're not lost and feeling like shuffled in the crowd. Because you've got to think, all of their teachers are breaking down the classrooms. All of the teachers are ending the school year with either a test or something. They're overwhelmed. They know they have like probably 6+ tests coming up, projects coming up. Like, it's a lot of pressure. So help them out with some organization, and maybe just explaining their role, explaining how they have to be responsible, explaining your expectations. Print it out. Make it a 1-pager. Don't overwhelm them with it, but give them something to work with. So, and then speaking of that, also send out parent letters and newsletters to families about those same plans. Let families know, hey, what's up? I know we spoke earlier in the year. I hope that you're speaking with parents each quarter, because, we need them on board. But speaking to those parents and letting them know, hey, this is what I have planned. This is what's coming up. Give them a calendar if you have it. Some of y'all are rock stars. You already have it all lined up. Go on ahead with your bad self. But some of you, maybe you don't have everything, but you can kind of give a skeleton of what, is going on. And that's fine as well. So give them a letter or newsletter about those plans. Make sure also if the district has something going on that they're aware of that as well, or if the school overall has some end of the school year things, like maybe a community night or family night. I don't know what the school districts are doing, but make sure that you're also including that in there so that they can, keep in touch and be on the same page as everybody else. And I think also getting with the tech person, whoever is over the website on your school, at your school, and talking with them too about maybe putting in some imperative nuggets about your specific class on the website would be key as well. I mean, I don't know how the school districts do it or how the schools do it. If they have like a tech person that can go on the school website and outline what's going on in teachers' classes or what's going on by subject, subject area, I think that would be imperative for communication and keeping parents on board. And then, of course, preparing your paperwork. Do you have IEPs that you're preparing? Do you have Title I information that you're doing regarding funding and how you were able to use the funding and the donations? Do you have to prepare paperwork for Donors Choose or other, grants that you were able to obtain throughout the school year? Do you have paperwork for, your doing your in-services and your professional development? Maybe you're trying to renew your certification. Do you have that paperwork lined up? Maybe you're transferring. I don't know. Do you have all those things dotted up, and do you have all the paperwork in line for your students that are being promoted and going to the next grade or whatnot? Make sure that you just have all of that taken care of so that nobody is caught off guard, and that the school year can end on a smooth note. So those are some key nuggets that I had for you guys. regarding how you can help students. And then I want to go into, um, I also want to go into some things that I found for you before I get started, um, regarding how you can end the school year strong and things like that. So I'm going to pull it up now for us. And it was this article I found is titled How to End the School Year Strong. This was written on the 3rd of April. Cool. So I think it's an opinion paper, so they're just going to talk about it. So he's talking here about a family heritage project. So they did a family heritage project. A member of the Hope Street Group, which is a Utah teacher fellow and was a finalist for Salt Lake City School District's Teacher of the Year. So pretty neat. So she's talking. Let's read and find out what she's talking about. So I teach in an elementary school where the majority of our students are from diverse backgrounds. When my own children were in school, they were hesitant to talk openly about cultural values. Their diversity wasn't acknowledged or appreciated. Interesting. So they thought it would be better to downplay their cultural identities. That's very sad, but that does happen quite often with diverse learners. Witnessing their negative experiences as students of color prompted me to explore new ways to empower my own students. I was determined to create an environment where students take pride in their cultural heritage and gain deeper understanding of their unique traditions and values. So if you're trying to think of an equitable way to close the school year, you can think of how can I become all inclusive and have that culture aspect to the end of the year tasks. And so this teacher has done this by creating an activity where she can celebrate family heritage and have students take pride in their cultural heritage. I think this is really, really crafty, really clever. So she says, this is why I initiated my family heritage project with my fourth grade teachers. And this project is adaptable. So each year at the end of the year testing, right? My students, they research their ancestral countries. Before starting their research, I send home a parent survey designed to collect information about the family's countries of origin, encompassing culture, values, traditions, notable individuals, holidays, music, family, famous landmarks, tourist attractions, and more. Now, this, I will say, if you're doing this, this is great, but some of that information might not be available. It might be limited. Some students might have been adopted. Some students might be with a guardian that might not have that information. So just be cognizant of that as well as you're implementing these various types of projects so that we're not offending students by trying to just accomplish a good deed like this. Now, she goes on. She says this project provides valuable opportunities for students to connect with their roots, engaging in meaningful conversations about their parents, some of who will reside in countries in their countries of origin. Once the necessary information is gathered, I guide my students in the process of creating a Word document to compile and preserve their newfound knowledge. So, very interesting. Going on, she says, here are a few of their comments reflecting on their excitement and engagement in this learning experience. And then she goes on and says, I didn't know the largest pyramid ever in the world was built in Mexico and not in Egypt. Huh. Then it says, did you know that we have a king and queen in Tonga? Cool. And a Mexican female astronaut, exciting or inspiring. And then here, what? My dad is from Spain and my mom's from Mexico? Next, Congo has many beautiful places. It's not all deserts. So it's really neat. So what she's doing is she's uncovering just cultural facts and things that people just really didn't know existed, and also dismantling various biases, stereotypes, and things that have been assumed by various cultures. Like, for instance, I didn't know the largest pyramid was in Mexico. I didn't know that either. I think it's kind of cool. Anyway, and then it says here, I want to learn my family's language, so when I visit Tonga someday, I know how to communicate. I think that's beautiful. So then she says, after they've completed their research, I meet with them one-on-one to review their work, ensuring the accuracy of information and encouraging them to add more details as needed. Then I print out their work, which is filled with interesting pictures and informative captions. Next, my students eagerly put their posters together. They add photographs, preferably of their families dressed in traditional clothing, which of course makes them feel more connected to their heritage. The final step is for them to practice presenting their posters. Whoop, whoop. I give them a choice to partner up with another student who shares the same cultural backgrounds. As I extend an invitation to their family members to attend, wow, She even extends an invitation to the family. This is beautiful. And observe and, oh wow, even participate in the presentations. Wow, that is rich. I mean, how many parents are really being asked to come in and do this? This is just very, very unique. This is a jewel. And then she says, it's gratifying to witness my students and their families proudly sharing information about their countries and engaging in a mutual learning experience. That's pretty powerful. And then she says, students take great pride in their unique identities and their diverse backgrounds. They have a strong desire to learn about their cultures and even plan to visit original countries someday. Their families are proud to witness their countries or their children's appreciation for their traditions and their eagerness to learn of the older generation. This is beautiful. She even had a cultural poster. That was a great idea. And I'll stop right there because I think that that was so rich in content. Just that one idea. I just think that's beautiful. Have you ever thought to do a poster around culture and celebrating student heritage, family heritage culture, family heritage poster at the end of the school year where students get a chance? I know some teachers have done um, oh, when a collage, I think it's called, where you put all the pictures together of the family and things like that, and it's kind of like a show and tell. You can do something like that as well. So I think it's really neat. I think too, this is really neat if the parents can afford to do, like ancestry DNA and things and find out their heritage. That would be great. I mean, I was shocked to find out that I was, German and that I was Irish and that I also had British, England, Wales in my bloodline among Nigerian and other things. But I think that, if they have access to that as well, that would take it to the next level. Or 23andMe, all these things, all these different platforms. So I think this is a great opportunity to just bring everyone together and have that all inclusivity approach happen again. All right, let's get back to the article. So she says here, you can also do a class yearbook. Now, I mean, yeah, a class yearbook is interesting. So let's read what she has to say. How about that? So she says, typically I spent the last 2 weeks of school helping my students with their end of the year projects. The elementary schools I work with did not have a yearbook. Interesting. That does happen. That's very interesting. So if you are in a situation where maybe there's, the kids just didn't get to a yearbook, or maybe there's a financial situation where they can't afford to put together a yearbook, then you can create class yearbooks. This is powerful. So she says these books were done the old-fashioned way, complete with lots of glitter, glue, cutouts, and most importantly, at last, the dreaded manila construction paper that showed up on the district supply list every year. Each student made their own book covers and completed a series of pages. This reminds me of when we used to fold paper bags over our math books. Oh my goodness. I know some of y'all know exactly what I'm talking about. When we used to use book covers, and it was just like the thing. And then you would like decorate your book cover and all that stuff. Anyways. All right, let's get back to this. So it says the pages in the books varied from year to year, but they were a lot like the ones you would see in a senior book. There were autograph pages for the classmates to sign, most likely to, best of, and a section for students to reflect on the work they had done that year. That's beautiful. Students were encouraged to scavenge their portfolios for work samples they were most proud of to include in their yearbooks. They also had to reread their first week of school letters and wrote responses to the new and improved students they had become. Interesting. On the last page of each book was a place for me to write each student a handwritten goodbye letter. Beautiful. And then she says, every year as a teacher, I wrote letters to my students, sharing my favorite moment with them, telling them my hopes and dreams for their future and how much I was going to miss them. While I can't say for certain how much of an impact that activity had on students, I will say that throughout the years, I would encounter former students, and they'd often tell me about the books from my class they still possessed. They still had their Mother's Day poetry books and their class yearbooks. Beautiful. She says, one special incident occurred when one woman who had come to my class in fourth grade during the middle of the year. She had come from a school district that was known for being a bit tough. She started off having a difficult time fitting in with our classroom and our culture of high expectations. I remembered writing on her end of the year letter how she had come to our class as a diamond in the rough, but finished the year showing her brilliance. I wrote that I couldn't wait to see everything she'd accomplish in the future. One day while grocery shopping, I heard this booming, Miss Shaw, from across the store. Don't you love that? When the students recognize you and call you. Okay, so she says, I turned to see that student. She ran up and gave me a huge hug and proceeded to tell me about still having her yearbook and about how my words to her about being a diamond had positively impacted her confidence. This is the special kind of moment that teachers look forward to. And I loved to hear how well she was doing in college. Whatever teachers do during the final days of school should make those last moments with students special and worth their time. I agree, right? So she says, I chose to reflect on the school year while creating a keepsake that students could treasure for years to come. Now that is beautiful. I'm glad I didn't totally downplay that article, because at first I was like, why would you need a school? And see that, shame on me for assuming that all schools would naturally have a school yearbook, but there you go. So if you don't have one, then there's a great activity for students to still remember who they are and sign their yearbook. I'm sure there's a section where students can sign off on each other's yearbook and things like that as well. So with that said, this has been a wonderful show. We'll continue with this, sometime in the future, but you guys are phenomenal. Thank you so much for joining me again on the Let's Get Great, thanks for joining me again on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast with yours truly, Dr. India White. And again, we talked about some tips for ending the school year strong. Feel free to reach out to me if you're needing some support, if you're wanting a boost at the end of the school year, if you want me to come and talk with your staff or whatnot, I would be honored. Also, reminder to follow me on Facebook when you get a chance. There's Miss India White. LinkedIn is The India White. Twitter is Indie Speak and Teach. Instagram is Indie238. YouTube is India White 123, and Threads is Indie238, and TikTok is Dr. India White. Make sure you tune in on the X Factor EDU network for this podcast, and you can also tune in on Spotify and all of the social media outlets. I hope to see you guys at some of my upcoming events. The Wisconsin Math Council in May. I have the keynote for FCTM coming up in June. CAMPT is in July in Texas. NCSM is in September. ICTM is in October. And who knows where I will be flying out to next. And so I'm so happy that you guys joined me. Oh, yeah, I forgot to let you know as well to check out the new launched Grit Mini Workshop on the Grassroots Workshops website. Thank you, Robert and Tribe, for that. Go ahead and check that out. And if you're at the Wisconsin conference, we are going to offer you a discount for those that attend my session. We have a special deal that we're working on with that. So I'll keep you posted with that. The Grit Mini Workshop is titled How to Harness Grit to Help Students Thrive. So go ahead and check that out as well. So with that said, guys, you guys have been absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much again for joining me on the Grit and Equity Talks podcast. And until next time.